He said it at his brother's barbecue. I know this because Lena Torres, his brother's wife, and one of the few people in that entire family who had treated me with consistent decency across 7 years of marriage, sent me a voice message 4 days before I boarded my flight to Kuwait. She held the phone close enough that the background noise came through clearly. Laughter, ice in glasses, someone turning down music. And then Marcus, my husband, speaking with the easy confidence of a man addressing an audience he trusted completely. Military wives always come back desperate, he said. 8 months is a long time. She'd be tired, she'd be emotional, and she'd sign whatever I put in front of her just to have stability again. I've already talked to someone. By the time she lands, the terms are going to be very favorable. More laughter. I listened to the message twice. Then I saved it to 3 separate locations. Then I called my attorney. Because Marcus had made one critical miscalculation. I had already talked to someone too. 6 weeks earlier. Before the story gets darker, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what city you are watching from. Because betrayal does not always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the person who said they would wait for you. And sometimes they forget who they are dealing with. My name is Staff Sergeant Priya Okafor. I am 31 years old. I have served 8 years in the United States Army, currently assigned to the 1st Cavalry Division at Fort Cavazos in Texas, working in logistics coordination and forward supply chain management, the kind of role that requires absolute precision, meticulous documentation, and the ability to track dozens of moving variables simultaneously without losing a single one. I grew up in Houston, Texas, the daughter of a Nigerian-American engineer father and an Indian-American physician mother who between them taught me 2 things above everything else. That preparation was the foundation of every outcome worth having, and that the moment you allow someone else to control the terms of any situation was the moment you had already lost. I had carried both lessons into the Army. I had carried them into my marriage. And when Marcus began showing me, slowly and then all at once, exactly who he had always been beneath the version of himself he had presented during our courtship, I carried them into the 6 weeks of quiet, precise, unhurried preparation I completed before I ever set foot on a military transport plane. I want to be clear about something before this story goes further. I did not file because I was angry. I filed because I was ready. There is a difference, and that difference was the entire margin between the outcome Marcus expected and the outcome he received. Marcus Okafor was 35 years old and worked as a regional sales director for a medical equipment company based in Austin. He was handsome, socially fluent, and extraordinarily skilled at presenting a version of himself calibrated precisely to whatever the room required. We had met 7 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding in San Antonio. He had been attentive and funny and genuinely interested, or so it appeared, in the details of my life and career. He said the right things about military service. He came to my promotion ceremony for staff sergeant and stood in the front row and looked proud in all the photographs. For the first 3 years, I believed the photographs were accurate. The cracks showed first around my 2nd deployment. Small things, unreturned calls during communications windows, vague answers about finances when I asked routine questions from overseas. A growing impatience with the inconvenience of my career that he dressed carefully in the language of concern. By my 3rd year back at Fort Cavazos, I had begun to notice a pattern that I did not yet have a name for, but that registered somewhere deep and reliable in the part of me the Army had trained to assess environments accurately. Something was being managed. I was being managed. And Marcus had decided apparently that I was manageable. The first concrete evidence came 14 months before my Kuwait deployment. I was reviewing our joint tax return, a routine task I handled annually because Marcus had, early in our marriage, expressed consistent discomfort with financial paperwork, and I had absorbed the responsibility without examining that discomfort carefully enough when I noticed a secondary income stream I did not recognize. A consulting LLC registered in Texas, generating irregular deposits into an account I had no access to and had not known existed. When I asked Marcus about it, he was smooth and immediate. A side project. New client. He'd meant to mention it. Nothing significant. I noted it. I moved on. I had a deployment workup consuming most of my operational attention, and I told myself I would return to it. The second incident came from a colleague. Captain Denise Warren, who had known both Marcus and me socially for 4 years, pulled me aside after a unit function with the careful expression of someone who has been holding something for too long. She has seen Marcus at a restaurant in Austin, not alone, and not in a way that read as professional. I thanked her. I asked her to write down what she has seen and send it to my personal email. She did. I saved the email. The third incident was the barbecue recording Lena sent me. By the time I boarded my pre-deployment leave and returned to Houston for the final 2 weeks before shipping out, I had 3 things Marcus did not know I had. Captain Warren's written account, documentation of the undisclosed LLC, and Lena's voice recording of Marcus explaining his post-deployment plan to an appreciative audience at a backyard barbecue. I also had an appointment with a family law attorney named Rachel Mendez scheduled for the following Tuesday morning, an appointment I had made from base 3 weeks earlier during a lunch break while Marcus thought I was running PT. Rachel reviewed everything I brought her in a single 2-hour session. When she finished, she looked at me across her desk and said, "Mrs. Okafor, I want you to understand something. Your husband is planning to negotiate from a position of strength. What you've brought me today means he doesn't have one." I asked her what we should do first. She told me. I followed every instruction precisely. Rachel's investigative accountant, a quiet, methodical man named Gerald Shu, who had been untangling marital financial concealment cases for 19 years, delivered his preliminary findings 8 days before my deployment date. The undisclosed LLC had been active for 22 months. It had generated $112,000 in that period. None of it had been disclosed on our joint tax filings. None of it had contributed to our joint accounts, our mortgage, our savings, or any shared financial obligation. Gerald also identified 2 additional accounts, one checking, one investment, held entirely in Marcus's name, funded through the LLC, and structured in a way that Gerald described, without editorializing, as consistent with asset concealment in anticipation of divorce proceedings. Marcus had been planning this for nearly 2 years, not reacting to problems, planning, deliberately, methodically, while I was at Fort Cavazos doing my job and coming home in the evenings and sitting across from him at our kitchen table and talking about our future like it was something we were building together. I sat with Gerald's report for one evening. Then I called Rachel. "File everything," I said. "Before you deploy?" she asked. "Before I board the plane," I said. Rachel filed a divorce petition, the asset disclosure motion, the LLC discovery demand, and a formal request for financial freeze on all undisclosed accounts on a Thursday afternoon. I boarded my flight to Kuwait on Saturday morning. Rachel moved with the organized efficiency of someone who had done this work long enough to find a particular satisfaction in cases where the documentation was clean, and the opposing party had underestimated the person across the table. The financial freeze motion was processed by the court within 72 hours of filing, covering the LLC accounts, the 2 undisclosed personal accounts, and all joint assets pending full financial disclosure in the divorce proceedings. The asset disclosure motion required Marcus to produce complete financial records for all accounts, entities, and income streams within 30 days, a deadline that his own attorney, Rachel later told me, had apparently not anticipated arriving so quickly or so comprehensively. Rachel also filed a motion to address the tax implications of the undisclosed LLC income, which she flagged to the court as a matter requiring separate financial review. Gerald Shu submitted a forensic summary to support the freeze motion that Rachel described as one of the cleaner concealment documentation packages she had worked with. I was at a forward logistics base in Kuwait when Rachel sent the update message. I read it during a communications window between shift rotations, sitting on a folding chair outside the operations tent with the desert wind moving sand across the ground in pale drifts. My unit's supply chain was running on schedule. My attorney was running on schedule. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. I came home 8 months later on a Tuesday in April. My mother picked me up from the airport, not Marcus. Marcus had been served with a divorce petition 4 days after I boarded my flight and had spent 8 months, according to Rachel, cycling through 3 different attorneys and a series of legal strategies that each collapsed when introduced to the documentation Gerald Shue had assembled. The settlement conference was scheduled for 2 weeks after my return. I wore my dress uniform. Not for sympathy, I want to be clear about that. I wore it because it was appropriate to the occasion and because after 8 months of logistics, operations in a forward deployment environment, I had earned every ribbon on that chest, and I saw no reason to be anything other than exactly who I was in a room where someone had spent 2 years planning to reduce me to a negotiating position. Marcus arrived with his third attorney, a family law specialist from Dallas named Howard Crane, who had a reputation for aggressive asset protection strategies and who had, Rachel informed me quietly before the session began, apparently not yet fully reviewed the scope of Gerald's forensic documentation. Marcus looked at me across the conference table with an expression I recognized from years of watching him recalibrate in rooms where things were not going the way he had prepared for. He had expected someone tired, someone grateful to be home, someone ready to sign whatever was put in front of her just to have stability again. I had been home for 12 days. I had slept 8 hours every night. I had eaten my mother's cooking and played with my sister's kids and run 6 miles every morning in the Texas spring air, and I was, by any reasonable measure, the least desperate person in that building. Rachel opened the first binder. Gerald's forensic summary, 22 months. $112,000, 2 concealed accounts. 1 undisclosed LLC, complete transaction history, cross-referenced against joint tax filings, annotated in Gerald's precise and completely devastating handwriting. Howard Crane read the first page, then the second. Then he asked for a recess. During the recess, I stood in the hallway near the window and drank bad conference room coffee and watched traffic move on the street below and felt, for the first time in a very long time, entirely at peace. Rachel appeared beside me. "Howard just asked what you're looking for," she said. I thought about the barbecue recording. Marcus's voice, easy and confident, explaining to his brother's friends exactly how desperate I would be when I came home. "Everything Gerald found," I said. "Plus fees," Rachel nodded once. "That's what I told him," she said. The settlement was finalized 3 weeks later. Full disclosure and recovery of all concealed LLC proceeds. Equitable division of all joint assets calculated against the complete financial picture Gerald's forensic work had established, not the partial picture Marcus had spent 2 years constructing. Full legal fees covered by Marcus's settlement contribution. A separate referral to a tax authority regarding the undisclosed income across 2 filing years, which Rachel had flagged as a matter outside her scope, but within the court's obligation to note. Howard Crane submitted the signed settlement documents without requesting further negotiation. Rachel called me that afternoon. "Done," she said. I was at Fort Cavazos, back in uniform, back at my desk, running supply chain projections for the next rotation cycle. "Thank you," I said. "You did the preparation," she said. "I just organized it. I thought about the 6 weeks before deployment, the Tuesday appointment with Rachel, Gerald's careful questions about the LLC, the 3 copies of Lena's voice recording saved in 3 separate locations. I thought about Marcus at that barbecue, explaining to laughing friends that military wives come back desperate and sign whatever is put in front of them. I thought about what I had put in front of him instead. "Rachel," I said. "Yes? Send Gerald a thank you from me," she laughed. Already done. The hardest part had nothing to do with Marcus. It was a Saturday morning, 6 weeks after settlement, when I was unpacking the last box in my new apartment near Fort Cavazos. A clean, quiet 2-bedroom with good light and a kitchen that smelled like fresh paint and possibility, and I found, at the bottom of a box of miscellaneous items, a photograph from our wedding, not a formal portrait, a candid. Someone had caught us laughing at something during the reception, genuinely laughing, both of us caught mid-sentence and unposed. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I put it face down on the kitchen counter and finished unpacking. Not because it didn't hurt. Because some things hurt and are still finished at the same time. The Army had taught me that particular distinction across 8 years and 3 deployments and more difficult mornings than I could accurately count. You feel the weight, then you move. Marcus believed that 8 months of deployment would make me small. He believed distance and time and exhaustion would compress me into someone grateful for whatever terms he had prepared. Someone too tired to examine documents carefully. Someone who had forgotten, somewhere over the Atlantic or the Persian Gulf, what she was capable of. He did not understand something fundamental about the people the Army produces. We do not become smaller under pressure. We become more precise. 8 months in Kuwait did not make me desperate. It gave me 8 months of clarity, 8 months of certainty, and 8 months of distance from which to see with complete and unobstructed vision exactly who Marcus had always been. I came home ready. I had been ready before I left. He simply never thought to ask. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and leave your city in the comments. It means more than you know. I will see you in the next one.